week, Nigeria bade farewell to its former president, Muhammadu Buhari, who passed away on Sunday in a London clinic. The revered leader's remains arrived to Nigeria yesterday and was buried in his northern home state of Katsina. As confirmed by Katsina State Governor Diko Umaru Rada, the president of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, mourns him and delegated Vice President Shetima and other government officials to facilitate the solemn repatriation of the former president body to Nigeria. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu further declared the day a public holiday in honor of the late president. Late Buhari, a prominent figure in Nigeria politics for decades, first rose to power as a military ruler following a coup in the 1980s. He later transitioned into civilian politician, famously referring to himself as converted Democrat. His return to frontline politics culminated in a historic victory in 2015, making him the first Nigerian president to unseat an incumbent through the ballot box. He was subsequently re-elected for a second term in 2019, cementing his place in the nation's political landscape. Join us with Odiawa AI as we look at his life, times, and governance throughout his public life reputation for shunning the ostentatious lifestyle, particularly his staunch anti-corruption stance and personal integrity. This is Viewpoint, and I'm Olaitan Babatunde.
The death of former Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has sparked a mix of emotions across the country, with few mourning his passing and many criticizing his policies and legacy.
We did not enjoy him. His regime was a total failure.
He ruled us for 8 years and today is no more. So for me, it's life well spent.
Buhari led Africa's most populous country from 2015 to 2024. And was the first Nigerian president to oust an incumbent through the ballot box. He first led the country as a military ruler after a coup in the 1980s. Buhari said he aimed to improve the lives of Nigerians through social welfare programs, the construction of train lines, roads, dams, airports, and power infrastructure. His supporters viewed him as Nigeria's conscience, because he had a reputation for shunning the corruption and ostentatious lifestyles often associated with the country's political elites. In the capital, Abuja, this resident said people expected him to fight corruption when he came into office, but instead,
people saw more corruption during his tenure than they thought would have happened in any other administration.
Buhari died in London at aged 82 following a prolonged illness, a presidential spokesperson said. Nigerian State Governor Diko Umaru Rada said Buhari's body will arrive in Nigeria on Tuesday and be buried the same day in his hometown of Dara.
Okay, so Odiawa, from the short clip we just saw now, we can see Nigerians giving their own perspective of the late president. Someone even called him a contraband. And as much as we had other people call him contraband, there are other people that talked about his life, talked about how humble, disciplined, and generous he is in general. And this is the reason why they felt like he has this close-knitted relationship with his community. But how might this personal trait have affected how he led the country and how Nigeria will remember him? Because let's come to think of it, when you call someone stupid, the truth of the matter is the way they do things, no matter how smart it comes out, you still feel like this person is stupid. There's nothing good that can come out of it. So when they say someone is like humble, is disciplined, or this man is a very simple person, do you think it's one way or the other, like his personal trait affected how he led Nigeria?
First of all, I want to say there's no way in life where way or where life where people will not criticize, condemn, or bad. Or it's just an opinion of you'll definitely have also other north who of course had a large dislike for Buhari, likewise Southerners. But oftentimes the world we live in, the bad always outweighs the
Yeah.
good only comes out when you're dead, sad enough. And that's where you hear people. We hear some positive reports, but over time we've been hearing the negative right from
Yeah.
his move. Let's start from his humble background, because I had to discuss with you earlier on and mentioned that it was his favorite spot where he was actually going to
Very.
rest. Now, if you look at it closely, got to hear he had a very simple lifestyle where he
Mm,
didn't even fancy latest three-seater settee or something.
yeah.
He preferred a mat. There was even a report where he traveled to Europe for medical checkup. Upon getting back, he was like, "Where's my mat?" So he preferred to
Sit that
sit down on that mat. That's as simple as it
as
was.
a
But at close range, people won't see all that. They feel, or we have this notion of, okay, yeah, this retinue of presidential paraphernalia or chief
mm,
executive paraphernalia. Therefore, there are times they can do and undo.
so yeah.
Why? Because oftentimes some policies which they will now initiate while coming into power might make or mar system,
Mm,
thereby generating positive or negative results. We start off from when he started as a military person.
person.
History has it that he actually wanted to become a medical, but when he had to look at late Hassan Katzin, who inspired him to join in the army,
Yeah.
got into the Grand military training now and graduating from there. He ended up serving as a governor, of course, engaging in the civil war. His first deployment was in Abeokuta, funny enough, as
Okay.
a second lieutenant. From there, he became a governor. He also filled in as Minister for Petroleum under the SM. But people will continue to look at him. Why? Because of his against indisciplined approach.
Mm,
And when you look at it, when someone is extremely good on this planet Earth, there are always ways for undermine one.
yeah.
We'll talk about that subsequently when he eventually won this getting.
All right. So moving on to you saying that people have different perception about him. There are some people that said, oh, he fought against corruption, and there's some people that called him absentee president. And that is because during his lifetime, there were moments he had to travel out for checkup and all that. And I think there was even a time where people started saying that, oh, he's been dead for a long time, and then they just cloned him. And I think at that time, I was still in the uni or probably in secondary school where they kept comparing, oh, this is the real Buhari, this is how he looks. There was a point they said he was not even the president, it was someone from, I think maybe Arab country that is ruling us, that the person just looks like him. There was a lot of things said about that man. And even after he died, there's still some people saying that, oh, he's been dead for a long time. It's just engine that is working through him and all that. There was a lot that we heard during his lifetime. And I want to ask, how do you think this perspective, this opinion affects or shape his legacy?
Well, people will always, like I said, have their own
Opinion
opinion,
about,
thereby
yeah.
stirring up propaganda from supporters. Might we recall, he was more of a North-centric person. People of the North. He had a lot of followers and backing, but people down south here didn't like his style.
His style, yeah.
Hence, he, upon winning the elections, tried to cook up all sorts of, oh, say Baba, even turn the say Baba to mockery.
Mm,
Eskia, they turned that to mockery also, but without knowing the actual meaning of why they were actually saying. Of course, from statements which he had also made, from whereby he had to say he would make the country ungovernable, which was quite uncouth for anybody aspiring to become a
he
leader
did that,
because he
yeah.
must show exemplary values. Fine, understandably, people make some remarks unguarded. No one is perfect. We also look at where he led the delegation of the North to go against Southwest for attacking some Northerners who must have been. Yes, we see some useful Northerners who go the extra mile or extreme to,
Yeah.
but people don't record all that. So these are things we should look at, weigh them side by side. How do we look at policy? Look at decree, which was very, very unfavorable for anyone. Firing squad left, right, and center. Decree number 4 also. Talk about social media gagging, where they have to shut people for delivering falsified news, unverifiable source from unverifiable source. It also started during his time. Now, going back to absentee president, which you mentioned also, you can also take a look at, fine, yes, pressure might be there. As one grows older, you might suffer some kind
Yeah.
of inadequacies health-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So the need for you to carry out some. And don't forget that the system was also bastardized by a set of politicians he took over from the Shagari regime, which
Yeah.
of course he had to deal with ruthlessly because of the corruption which was inherent in. So if there's a system like corruption whereby the healthcare system is not even working, he as a president can't even take care of his own medical condition because some politicians have already bastardized this. So coming in to correct or rectify that, he needs to go out there and make his presence known before the international body. There's no how a president will not get himself involved, paint a positive image about
Of
his
the
country,
country.
before be it NATO, United Nations, or whatever body that may be there. So if his trips were taking too long, that's another question.
Yeah.
Was he physically fit? That's
Mm.
another thing. If you're not physically fit as a president, then you step down for another. That's where the thing now comes in. So his regime was actually toppled, not because of his absenteeism based on health issues from the military. It was a case of he was too strict, number one, as a military person, because
Yeah.
decree number two actually had to stand out for if there were security threats within the country to deal with anyone. Then decree number four, those were the two pronounced decrees. Decree number four had to deal ruthlessly with people who were actually churning out falsified reports. And this thing almost repeated itself again while he was in power during the second term. Remember, there was a ban on where he
Yeah.
wanted to
The hate
ban
speech.
exactly hate speech. So if you look at these things closely, these are the things people will actually key into, but they will never see the reason behind the action. It is the actions they look at, but the reasons behind the actions. I'm not defending Buhari's actions, neither am I defending the actions of people who criticize his. So being an absentee president from the people, they have their own rights to
To
their own
say that.
opinion. But Buhari being also an absentee president also must have tabled his reports why he was absent, because it's only normal for people to begin to coin all sorts of notions. Could this be true? Could this be that? The notions such as, oh, it's an engine that's working inside the
Yeah.
system, or maybe it's a clone who's
Clone,
actually
yeah.
ruling the country. All those kind of things, they don't fall into it. But forgetting that we also had a deputy filling in the gap. That's another feature that
No,
characterized.
I think during that time, when there was a time he was not around, and then I think Oshibanjo had to take the lead
Over.
at that
Yes.
time. And people said that, oh, during Oshibanjo time things got a little bit better, because I think when he was the president, he actually stopped the export of the import of rice and all that, and then he made things a little bit difficult for people in Nigeria then. And then after he left for a while, Oshibanjo allowed that. And then, people were like that, oh, things got a little bit better. People are no longer hungry and all that. And then, there was this credit towards him. And like you said, I feel like it's until people die that we get to hear the good things about them. Because I think this might not sound the way he wanted it when he said that Nigerian youth are lazy and that they should go back to farming. And then he just
I was
makes,
still coming to
yeah,
that.
he just makes people wonder, like, oh, I went to school, I studied hard, and you want me to go back to the north, but there to the farm. But then we're forgetting the fact that in the north, where he came from, they are so into farming. So if he's saying that because it feels like if we can survive, and
Background.
so yeah, it's because of his background. And then we just kind of overlook that. And now the person that is not even saying that we should go back to the farm said that, oh, on getting to this position, there will be surplus of cassava, there will be surplus of corn. And then people are still saying now, even the cassava and corn, we can't even feed on it. It is expensive. So, like you said, I feel like it's until when people die that we get to see more about them. So, I can continue.
Okay, going back to Nigerian youth being. Now, I mentioned or said something. He must have said something, but the
Yeah,
reason behind the action, people do not.
yeah,
Now, going further now by Nigerian youth. The average youth you see now in Nigeria is too proud to pick up a hoe and cut a farm.
yes,
Talk less much more about mechanized farming, which has not even simplified farming. They will not agree to do that, but yes, still they want to. So, and these days, they are always looking for the nearest shortcut. You can look at the average student who will say he or she passed through drilling from the lecturers
yeah,
and back and forth. But you only pass through the school. Did the system pass through
true.
you?
You
Because if the system of the institution passed through you, you'll be ready to pick up a hoe and a cutlass
to
to
work.
know that you actually need to put food in your belly.
Mm.
We look at so many people who are multi-billionaires here in Nigeria, quietly living off their farm produce, but they are not mentioned. We only hear the Dangote. Why? Because of the level he has taken it to. He has taken it to the global scale. But there are some other people making their money quietly, particularly in Benue State, the food baskets of the nation, particularly from yams or export of stock fish, just to mention a few other exports just like that. That was what Buhari was trying to checkmate, that we can be actually be self-reliant on our own produce. The only produce I see here in Nigeria is plastic, where you see made in Nigeria, and it's quite sad. If we can see, we go about with Amala Ibadan. This
Yeah.
is a native export. If we can act, the only way we can export that here is maybe during Chowdeck and Glovo. These are
Yeah.
logistics
Mm-hmm.
companies. That's the only means of export as far as I'm concerned. But there are people also making money quietly in their exports of produce to create awareness concerning our product. If we can take this now to the global scale, whereby we can recognize pasta here in Nigeria, white man can recognize amala over there or lafun over
Mm.
there. I think it will make that was what he was actually driving at, making sure that our indigenous products are simple thing as two are important. Yes, we have a lot of timber in the forest. When you're traveling, you're seeing green leaves. So, and these things you can be gotten from those tall trees. So these are things he was trying to check me. But maybe communication
What's
was
the
now a
problem?
problem.
Yeah.
And being communication made a problem, government chooses to operate based on secret. Why? Because if information gets out there or leaks, it still boils down to degree number two, which I said can become a security threat to undermine it.
So please. So talking about how you said is people likes them, the Northerners, and there's also a video online where they were celebrating his death. Can we say he failed at home?
I won't say feel that typical of Africa when great man dies becomes a carnival, not just a
Oh,
burial.
okay.
So I'm talking from experience. So once, particularly him belonging to the octogenarian set, died in his 80s. So it's a thing of celebration of life
Yeah.
within the death rates now, which is taking. Gone are the days where people like say they are dying through cancer. Now, the expected mortality rate for death now we know is between 80 to
It is,
100 and
yeah.
something. So passing on in the 80s, I think still tolerably okay
Okay,
for
yeah.
them to celebrate because he has achieved a lot. Was and they don't joke with the military in the north. Was a head of state. He did something which was quite jaw dropping and wowing enough, whereby he had to test, test, lost three times, and won eventually. He didn't just win; he was the first person to win an incumbent president.
President.
So this now, if you look at them, they are achievements which are worth celebrating in the life of.
So moving on, Buhari moved from being a military ruler to a democratic president, but he left behind a country facing economic and security problems. I think before he became the president, he was saying that when he becomes the president, the issue of the Chibok girls and Boko Haram will be laid to rest. But to be factual, we still have the issues coming up even till this present moment. So it means that whatever he said then, whatever he promised Nigerians then, it didn't work. Okay, so now how did his leadership style and his political journey contribute to the challenges we're facing in Nigeria as of the moment? Because some people, I think when before he left, some people were like that. We hope that when Buhari leaves, we would not miss him. And that means we would not say, oh, when Buhari was here, at least things were still a little bit better. And I feel like Nigerians have gotten to a point where they say that. So, how do you think all of this contributes? His leadership style, did you think he contributes to what we're facing now in Nigeria?
So typically, in economic, the
Yeah,
wants of man
that's it.
insatiable.
Yeah.
You can never satisfy him. People were complaining during the era of Shah. People complained during the people complained
Mm,
during the time of person. Even Yaradua. That's why I began by saying once by human beings needs satiable. You can never satisfy people. Even the good you gotten. It's if you've been doing good over time, just that one mistake you
people seem to
overshadow,
forget
they seem to
the
forget it.
good thing,
So falling back now on Buhari's
leadership
administration
style.
or leadership style, what he one of his associates made a remark yesterday on Channel C, and it was like Buhari made a statement person. And these are part of the good remarks people or
Mm.
good reports people make, which they didn't you never got to hear
When he was
when he
still
was still
there.
alive. That if he saw the country was in shambles and he wouldn't have contested it. Because Buhari came at a point in time when the country was in the IC intensive care
Mm.
unit, and he had to take over from another party which had already laid a
Yeah.
ground map for the country, which they were working with. That was where we began to hear during his administration about budget padding. And this essence of this budget padding was because probably, for instance, you're using 11 trillion for a particular project for the country, and then it's not enough. You need to pad it up with another 11 trillion, making. So
Yeah.
these are things we should begin to look at. People understand why they were padding the budget. Why? Because there were loopholes and lapses. Just for instance, that you made mention of the Chibok girl. Now, to rescue these Chibok girls, how well fortified or furnished, arm-wise, are
Are
our
we?
military personnel? Do they have the military assault drone? That was another thing we should look at. Do they have the Gatling guns that can speed or shoot up sporadically within nanoseconds? These are things we should have looked at. Do they have enough cannons to confront, or do they have the warfare mechanization to actually confront the
Yeah.
insurgents? And who are actually financing these insurgents? Where are the funds coming from? How well financed is our government to also tackle the people who are backing these
Backing them.
insurgents? So these are things we should begin to look at concerning the Chibok girls. Not only in security, we talked about food security earlier on,
Yeah.
whereby we needed to be self-reliant. So these are things we ought to have looked at concerning the remarks which were even made concerning his own
Yes.
administration.
All right. So you said earlier that Buhari had, tried, becoming the president several times before he later won. And I think the same thing is happening with Atiku. And it got to a point where people are already saying that, can we get to a point where Atiku is saying, okay, I'm not doing this again, because he has tried a lot of times, and still this man has not won any election. And but then I feel with this, I can say probably he's looking up to Buhari, and he's hoping that one day Nigerians will see him. And then he for Buhari, he won after forming or merging with the APC party. How did this change his strategy? Like, or the change in his strategy help him win the election?
First of all, not zeroing in on Buhari now. Buhari
Yeah.
is center of attraction
Attraction,
now.
yeah.
Let's spread our tentacle wide enough. Looking at it, I really respect Nigerians.
Okay.
It's a case of, according to Fela, suffering and smile. That's the resilience until that particular case which you're gunning for is eventually achieved. So I want to respect Buhari for that. He ran, continued running until he crossed the finish line and got the mantle.
And then
held it.
finally,
And he didn't just get it, he got it, like I said, toppling the incumbent as he did again. Let me say he's fond of toppling. So now, going over now to the major issue, why he didn't win. If you want to look at it based on political arithmetic, it's a case of being, I made mention of him being North-centric earlier on, whereby he had only followers from the North. And because of his approach to policies and matters, down south, he wasn't receiving a lot of political patronage. Now, if we look at this thing closely, he made some statements such as he would deal ruthlessly with those who didn't vote
for him,
Then there were some other remarks. You don't make some statements out of anger, like I said, no matter
or
what.
when you are too excited.
Exactly. Particularly if you have something to chase. And if at all peradventure you need to make some statements, comments, or remarks, the tone in which you use, communication of understanding needs to be applied. That's another thing. So I think that was where the missing link was. And he was under a political party which had a northern orientation. Oftentimes, political parties are formed either from religious background, ethnic backgrounds, or a particular technocratic ideology. Now, the party in which he was running under, which was the ANPP, the All Nigeria People's Party, was a north-centric party. It wasn't dominant in the southwest, or even in south-south, or even anywhere in the part of the country. We had the PDP dominating nationally, which of course they applied this pan-Nigerianism within its institution. But by the time they began to have PDP currently now, as they have their crisis, it was because they began to have a divide where they now had a time, which now eventually emerged with a merger with the CPC, Congress for Progressive Change, which the Buhari now administration actually floated. Now, this CPC had to merge with the Action Congress, thereby becoming AP. Now, a large number of the ACN merged with the CPC based on religious values, because we can see dominantly we have a lot of Muslim-inclined people from the southwest and also the north. And we look at this, we have people who are less of Muslims from the southwest, geopolitically speaking, from
Mm.
the south and the
Yeah.
southwest and the southeast. So this was a major factor and hallmark of beneficiary for or benefits for Buhari,
Right.
whereby he had to get, I think, close to 12 point something million votes, thereby exceeding again another number of votes running into tens or hundreds of millions, thereby toppling Jonathan again.
Yeah.
So it's a case of having this pan-Nigerianism mentality where you
Mm.
can now convince the Nigerians at large. That is the ideology in which other political arithmetic now use to oust PDP administration.
To round up, I would like to ask, we said that he has this close knit relationship with the people, but nationally we know that people really not support him as such, and maybe because of the things that happened during his time, maybe because of the discipline we talked about earlier. But then it's in the obvious that people were not in support of him as such, maybe because of his party, that can actually play a major part. But then I would like to know, do you how do you think Nigerians will remember him? Because I said earlier that there are videos, and then we showed some video where some people were saying their perspective about him. And I said that someone actually called him a contraband in his country. And when we're talking about contraband, we're talking about something that is not accepted. And if we're talking about something that is not accepted, we're talking about things like plague. We're talking about something that should not even be seen at all. And then someone referred to him as that he might not know the weight of what he said, but in the actual sense, if we're to, dissect that word, break it down, that is what contraband actually meant.
Yeah.
And, people had those things to say about him. And I'm sure that a lot of people will have good things to say about him. And then, I would like to know your opinion about what you think people will say about him, just your own perspective. And how do you think the media coverage of his death shape how future generation will see him when he was in office?
Well, to begin with, from my own opinion, first thing I will say, and I congratulate mostly,
Mm.
is changing demographics. That's the first thing. Because June 12 is a significant date in Nigeria's
Nigeria.
history. May 29 fine is also another significant date on to another republic. We've returned to republic so many times, so I don't think May
Mm.
29 was
Was
deserving of
okay of that
democracy day,
day.
but June 12, whereby a credible election and fairest election ever was taken, was actually annulled, by which administration. Going forward, I would say decree number 2 and decree number 4, particularly decree number 4, whereby false reports were being checkmated. And decree number 2, security threats. Security threats, he will also be remembered for that, which was what he tried to kill dealing with Boko Haram. But it, of course, saying that the country was already in its ICU, like I said,
Yeah.
intensive care unit, his hands were tied. Secondly, he was beginning to deal ruthlessly with people who were corruption agents, just as he
Mm.
began after taking over the Shagari administration. So, but for them to seek safe haven, that was where we began to see a major decamping en masse in 2015 over to the APC. And anyone who had to defect from the PDP or any opposition party to the APC had already automatically been given political refuge. So these were things juxtaposingly side by side. You look at it, was he actually fighting corruption or was he actually for corruption?
Corruption.
So these are things he will be remembered for. Now, going over lastly, conclusively speaking, now to the media, when they have to give their reports, they need to be objective about the
About
reports.
it.
They give the negative sides, they give the positive sides. Then maintain a neutral ground by giving the opinions or views of people who have made their remarks based on negative.
All right, thank you very much. And I think one thing the media should also always remember that is they are the fourth arm of government, and then it shouldn't be about what the owner of the organization wants you to say. It's about saying the truth and being objective about it. Either it is for the good or for the bad, letting the people know what it is they need to know. I think that's the most important thing the media people should know. And I would like to thank you for joining me on the show today. It was really an insightful one, and I'm sure that a lot of people can actually see what our past president actually did. Now, Now, after concluding his second term in office in 2023, President Buhari largely withdrew from public life, spending most of his time in Daura. His successor, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, inherited a nation grappling with significant challenges, including double-digit inflation, severe foreign exchange shortage, widespread economic hardship and low oil production, and persistent insecurity that has spread across most parts of Nigeria. As the nation mourns former President Muhammadu Buhari, he would be remembered for his unique political journey and his enduring impact on Nigeria's governance. And that will be all on today's episode of Viewpoint, where we discover perspective and embrace dialogue. Do well to follow us on all our social media platforms and to also subscribe for more political content. Thank you for watching.